What's up, everybody? This is Seabass. I wanted to talk to you today about why L5R is my favorite tabletop role-playing game. I've been GMing and playing L5R for over 10 years now, and I've tried many tabletop role-playing games, both mainstream and independent, but L5R has been something that I obsess over. On one hand, the community is on another level. They're passionate, they love this setting, and there's the r/L5R Discord that I would totally recommend. On the other hand, samurai are just badass, and I can't think of another tabletop role-playing game that captures the fantasy of playing a samurai the way L5R does. You might think of classic movies like Zatoichi or Seven Samurai. You might think of historical anime like Rurouni Kenshin or Samurai Champloo. You might think of mythological folk tales with tanuki and dragons, and whatever that thing is. And the answer is yes. L5R is flexible, and you can play it your way. By default, L5R is about conflict, on the battlefield, in the courts, and in one's mind. Players will be asked to make impossible decisions when the code their characters live by suddenly contradicts itself, or when their duty conflicts with their desire. Characters will cry out to their rivals in blind fury when they clash in deadly duels. The players will get to know their characters intimately by the first session through some of the deepest character creation ever seen in tabletop role-playing gaming. And with the newest edition of L5R 5th edition, players are given agency to add details to the scene and characters in the story, investing their own ideas into the setting. L5R has been my favorite system since I was first introduced to it in 4th edition. At the time, my friends and I had only known Pathfinder, D&D, some other D20 systems, and we each decided to branch out, try a new system, GM our own campaign. One friend picked up Numenera, a science fantasy tabletop role-playing game set in the far distant future, written by Monty Cook. Another picked up Star Wars: Edge of the Empire by Fantasy Flight Games, one that focuses on playing the scoundrels, rebels, foot troopers of the Star Wars setting. And I picked up L5R 4th edition. Then, at the time owned by AEG, it was a D10 system made for simulating a gritty, fantastical story inspired by feudal Japan and classic samurai cinema. All of us picked our games based on beautiful artwork and the fantasies that they represented. The fantasy I bought into was that L5R would allow me to play as a noble and capable samurai, vanquishing evil like in the anime I would watch on Toonami after school. What I got were some of the most memorable gaming moments that we still talk about years later. So I want to talk to you today about the fantasy that L5R promises, how it delivers through its content and mechanics, leading it to become my favorite tabletop role-playing game system. The setting of Rokugan is a fictionalized country inspired by feudal Japan. It was developed in 1995 for the collectible card game, developed even further for the RPG, following soon after in 1997. Rokugan is overseen by an oppressive imperial family, headed by the Emperor, as well as 7 feuding great clans, and many more minor clans, all of which serve the Empire and their own agenda. The clans all have history, rivalries, alliances, duties to the Empire, and varied interpretations of both religion and philosophy. The country at large sees its conflict with supernatural forces like the Shadowlands bordering their nation, or cosmic threats such as the Nothing, and foreign diplomacy from nations each inspired by India, China, Korea, and plenty more. Players would expect to play as samurai nobles, but not just warriors. You could play as diplomats, spiritualists, shinobi. This was a game that placed the philosophy of Bushido at the center of the role-playing experience. Bushido dictated how characters should act in the setting if they want to maintain their status as nobles. Samurai had power, including the exclusive right to carry arms, and wealth. Money was a rare subject for players to be concerned with. However, such privilege carried great expectations. If you carry yourself improperly within the courts, you could lose it all. Similarly, in combat, characters can be cut down by a single devastating strike if they aren't careful. In the time I played 4th edition, I enjoyed how it separated itself from D&D. My players weren't free to murder their problems away as they didn't want to damage their honor by acting without compassion, combat was also quite lethal. Getting hit meant a character would suffer wounds, penalties to their dice rolls. Or during a dueling scene, a character might roll so high as to accidentally kill their opponent when it was just a duel to first blood, bro. So the players relied on words before swords. There were plenty of skills the characters had access to, along with unique skill abilities, specific advantages, disadvantages, all giving the characters unique strengths in both combat and intrigue. Character creation was also entirely different from any system I've played. There are 20 questions providing context and history to your character options, including what your characters believe in, their personality. These questions were not directly tied to mechanics just yet until the 5th edition, which we'll get to shortly. But the questions were great at helping a player get to know their character on a deeper level. The questions also help bring up world-building decisions between the player and the GM. L5R 4th edition did a good job of simulating the samurai experience as it may be seen in classic samurai cinema. This was different from what I had in mind coming from the perspective of anime, but I still had a blast GMing 4th edition. However, with 5th edition L5R, released in 2018, I felt like I got closer to the experience I was looking for. You see, 5th edition L5R RPG by Fantasy Flight Games relaxes its focus on gritty stories of life and death in favor of offering tools for telling stories of drama, and especially ones involving internal struggle. Bushido was still important, and samurai still maintained their privilege with expectation. But now there was an added focus on a character's duty versus their desire. In some cases, a character's past versus their desires. This idea became the core role-playing experience for L5R RPG. Characters now become stressed over balancing duty and desire, to the point of potentially losing their cool at inopportune times. With new stress mechanics, negotiating in the courts can be treated as structured conflicts, much like combat. Except now your opponent can attack you by stressing you out. Dueling is also heightened by the risk of losing one's cool. Allow your focus to slip, and your opponent will immediately strike at the opportunity. Another key difference for 5th edition L5R was to introduce narrative dice. I was no stranger to narrative dice, thanks to my friend's Star Wars campaign, and Fantasy Flight, their narrative dice had seen many systems with their own take on this resolution mechanic. But rather than the binary pass-fail results of a check, dice might offer succeeding at the risk of stressing your character out, or failing but still gaining some kind of benefit. The choice is given to the player, thanks to another mechanic called Roll and Keep, which was introduced back in the 1st edition of L5R. The players may roll several dice at once, but only get to keep a few. So this brings up a fun question of, will they choose to keep stressful results just to succeed? And if they do, what's stressing their character out? Personally, I enjoy the new emphasis on character's emotional state. During combat, you can ask the players why their character was gaining stress, and the player might attribute it to their character's past, revisiting them during the fight. Or the player might say how their character really feels about their opponent, why they desperately need to defeat them. I also enjoy the narrative dice for what's called opportunity results, which are results that don't directly contribute to passing or failing, but they prompt moments for the player to add something to the narrative, even to the scene or to a specific NPC, and they prompt a player to add a quick moment of role-playing. For example, opportunity might be used to reassure another character in the scene, allowing them to remove some stress. A player might roleplay at that moment. Another opportunity asks the player to describe an interesting detail present in the environment. Sometimes this can be terrain, which is something that creates a real mechanical effect. All players have access to opportunities like these, and more, depending on techniques their characters gain through play. Lastly, the way the books are organized are by genre or theme, and if you buy the core book, you have enough to run a game with the basic premise of playing a samurai game of conflict and intrigue. There are some setting information for games that touch on supernatural threats, foreign diplomacy, but with the supplemental books, you'll find it goes into much greater depth. For example, a book like Shadowlands, the essential guide to the Dominion of Fu Leng, provides everything you need to play an adventure focused on exactly that. You would expect character options that give players access to more demon-slaying abilities, a list of Shadowlands creatures, and setting information on the Shadowlands itself. With a lot of these books, you also get optional rules that enhance the theme of the adventure, like new ways to spend opportunities, a completely new set of 20 questions, rules for creating your own custom content, and each book also offers an accompanying adventure that highlights the unique themes and mechanics of the source book. In my case, I love opening Session 0 by presenting these different books to my players, asking what kind of game they would want to go for. Is it a horror survival game in Shadowlands? A game of politics and spies, like in Courts of Stone? A charming slice-of-life story of traveling Ronin? It should also be said that books usually feature a great clan territory, so if you wanted to limit your adventure by area instead of theme, it's another way to look at these books. So, if I had to make a list of the top 5 reasons I love L5R, especially 5th edition, this is what I would say. The focus on duty versus desire is a great engine for drama. The GM can pit duty versus desire for a single character, or the GM could pit one character's duty with another's duty, or another's desire, which creates very personal tension. The focus on a character's emotional state, their internal struggle and stress, is very human and provides a lot of moments to slow down and roleplay. Character creation is such a great time, it feels like you're already roleplaying before the first session. The narrative dice keep the story moving even if your players fail their checks. They fail to find a clue? They might use opportunities to describe a different clue the GM might not have expected. The books are genre-focused. You will have your own ideas of what a samurai fantasy looks like, and at least one of these books will stand out to you. Same for your players. I also love the modularity of these books with their optional rules. You can see a list of different rule sets in the 2020 errata, linked in the description, that talks about mixing and matching rules to help support different themes. What would be your favorite thing about L5R? Let us know in the comments. If you have any topics you'd like us to get into, something you've been struggling with in your L5R game, our focus is to help reduce the barrier for roleplaying in L5R or in general. For instance, the newest source book, Rid of the Wilds, was released about a month ago. It features a lot of non-human character options. Adventures of Brokagon, a 5th edition SRD version of L5R, also features a lot of non-human options. And we've been seeing a lot of questions in chat about how to incorporate these non-human characters into your typical L5R campaign. So next time, I think I'll be talking about how to be more flexible with character options, how to incorporate them into your game, or maybe how to limit those character options in a way that seems fair to your players. All right, thank you for watching. Talk to you next time.